Yep.
I got a pacemaker to play with. Okay.
Alright, y'all ready?
Hold up, give me a minute. I still need to get my script
Yeah,
down.
I'm ready.
Jenna, this is gonna be so cool.
Go off, girl.
Clicker is right over there.
Click here. Yes, can't have the same thing happening as yesterday.
Keep that. I started filming Tripp's presentation. He gets like 10 seconds in. He's like, "Wait, where's the clicker?"
Where's the cushion?
And I go, "Wait." Sorry, Tripp.
Do I need to be like right here?
That's fine. Yeah, that's good.
Just
don't go
stay
past that
within
pole.
the pole and the blue tape.
Okay.
You got this.
Very good. My little hand. Okay.
You're good. You're good. You're good. You're good.
Okay. Tell me whenever you're ready.
Are you ready?
Flex.
Power pose.
Okay. All right.
All right. So, good morning, and my research topic is about the modern-day Mozart effect, the influence of hardcore techno on video game performance. Now, I personally have been a long-time fan of video games, and while I'd be the first to admit that I'm not the best at them, I do at least perform well enough in order to compete in a few competitions, mainly being Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. That being said, at such competitions, I've noticed a common similarity between some of my opponents while I was in match, being that quite a few of them wore headphones and was listening to music while playing the game itself. Now, while I personally got curb stomped at most of the matches that I participated in, I did notice a lot of the players did indeed wear headphones while competing. And this got me thinking, does music affect video game performance for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate? So I initially got this thought process going in the middle of summer of 2021. And I started doing an informal questionnaire with some of my fellow Super Smash Bros. Ultimate players, where I asked the question, why do you listen to music when playing Super Smash Bros. Ultimate? And to this, I got, quite frankly, no clear answer to. Some of the people listen to music because that's simply how they play better, and others listen to ignore all the players, myself included. Because of this failure of a questionnaire and a growing curiosity, I formulated the question, does hardcore techno music influence players' performance in a video game? That being Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Now, before we begin, I would like to define some terms. That being hardcore techno. It's an electronic dance music that has a clear hard kick, a high BPM rhythm, and that is above 140 beats per minute. This is used because it has common similarities to quote-unquote gamer music, and that is why it is used. Additionally, we have our amiibo, which is an AI fighter that has been trained to fight in a specific fashion. And this is mainly used competitively, but it will also serve in this experiment as a control unit. And there's also the learner's effect, which is the more times that one completes a task, the faster that they will complete it. This is also a major limitation that comes in my research, but I was able to overcome it, and I will explain that later. So when I was initially starting my investigation, I looked at studies overlooking connections between video games and music. And in doing so, I was able to find two related articles related to my research. These two papers discuss the relationship between video games and music in differing ways. For example, the first paper investigated the effects between introverts and extroverts when playing a classical fighting game, while the second focused on a relationship between the effects of background music on experienced and noob players on a classical fighting game as well. Now, despite these two studies formulating their questions on different independent variables in mind, both mentioned a specific theory that quickly caught my attention. And this brings me to the Mozart effect. This focuses on the effect of listening to music on one's performance. And despite being a minor influence on my two main sources, I investigated into this thing, and I found a plethora of responses, which identified a possible answer as to why people perform better while listening to music on video games. However, an official research paper has not been conducted on such a paper, and there's only been quote-unquote gamer science, which is unprofessional and unreliable. So because of this, I decided to formulate this paper due to that. Additionally, this research also showed that there was an enhancement of spatial temporal reasoning performance after listening to Mozart's music for 10 to 12 minutes, as shown by Jenkins in 2001. Even in the studies with positive results that, the studies that have positive results for this enhancement for the Mozart effect, it is very small and general intelligence is not affected. But despite this is still important because it will be the main connection between my study and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate and music. Now, as for the current knowledge of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, so most of the academical knowledge and non-gamer science has been divided into three categories, that being your social and community studies, which focuses mainly on your cultural aspects and gender studies, Now, despite this being the large majority, about 70% of research, this is widely unrelated to my research. Additionally, we also have character-specific studies, which is also quite irrelevant because the participants in my study were able to use whatever character that they wanted. Additionally, we also have analyzation and optimization of AI, amiibo, and other equipment. And this made up about 20% of the research out in the field. And this is widely important and able to code my amiibo in order to make sure that I had a widely well-rounded control. Additionally, we also have hardcore techno music. Now, while there is a very limited range of research out on the topic itself, I was able to find quite a few definitions of what it was itself. That being that it's a form of electronic dance music that focuses on a strong, fast, synthetic rhythm. It also has a strong bass kick and is typically accompanied by orchestral elements and a synth pad. Now, this is featured in a multitude of rhythm games for its complexity, which is important because of its relationships to gamer music. Now, I included this because when people normally listen to music while playing video games, they try to listen to some sort of electronic music because it keeps them hype, per se. So I tried to do something that was closely related to the ties of gamer music in itself. So to recap for very lecture review, we reviewed the effects of the Mozart effect. We also reviewed Super Smash Bros. And its limited range of data on music. And we also reviewed hardcore techno, which there's also a very limited scope on that. Which brings me to my very large gap, if I may say. So while previous researchers may briefly research other areas of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and more so on the rest of the series, there still has yet to be done on any research on correlations between music and Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Now, additionally, there's no research done about the hardcore techno genre or any of its subgenres. And for this reason, this paper will address the gap of quantitative research of the hardcore techno and its effects on the game Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. Limitations of this research would be a smaller sample size and its limited range of environment. However, this paper is still valuable as it's pertinent to investigate the Mozart effect on modern-day music. This brings me to my initial hypothesis, where I suggest that the presence of music will enhance a video game performance. So, exposing students at Hope's Peak Academy, the local high school in the area, to a variety of hardcore techno music will improve their performance ability of Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. In short, this presence of hardcore techno music will significantly affect video game performance. And this brings me to my method. So I use a quasi-analytical approach with 2 waves of quantitative data and an interpretation of results with a t-test. So to begin with, I discussed this earlier, but for my control, I used an amiibo, as I have right here. Now, this is a computer-operated system where it is specialized to be trained in a specific manner. And for my experiment, I will use a standardized Roy amiibo that will be used as a set control against participants. And I actually coded this with my expert advisor, a very well-known amiibo trainer within the area, and I was able to get a very good standardized amiibo to where it did not have a very biased effect towards any sort of move set, and it was very easy to defeat, but it was still challenging against beginners. Therefore, it was a good weeding out tool, and it was a good opponent. This brings me to my hardcore techno groups. So I had 5 songs that I used, and for my independent variables, all with differing BPM types from 210 to 170, and all of them had the same author because of the consistency for the song types in itself. Additionally, I had 2 controls, that being Super Smash Bros. Ultimate's main theme Battlefield with a BPM of 140, and Song 7, which was used as my silent to represent players that do not listen to music while they are playing Super Smash Bros. Ultimate in itself. After consenting to the tournament, players were told that they would be fighting an amiibo a total of 7 times. 5 experimental trials, that being your hardcore techno trials, and 2 controlled trials, that being Super Smash Bros. Ultimate's Battlefield and the silent control. Players were not told the order of these 7 trials, and all participants were given 10 minutes to familiarize themselves with the amiibo's skill set. And after the participants were demonstrated to be highly skilled and successful, participants substantially started the 7 trials in a randomly generated order, and this was for session 1. And during the trial, the experimenter timed the data with a stopwatch and recorded the time in between each kill and the total amount of time taken to do all 3 kills. So something important to denote is that for my first session, I did a randomized song order for all of the trials. And for session 2, which is about 5 to 7 days after the first trial, participants competed in another session, which is probably similar to session 1, except for that it was in the reverse song order of session 1. Now this was done to decrease the learner's bias effect, where people could significantly get better they significantly get better the more that they play against the opponent, in this case, my amiibo. So because of this, I decided to do whichever song was last for session 1 was going to be used first for session 2, so that the learner's bias would be canceled out. Now, it would not go away completely, but it would be substantially decreased. So now to analyze my results. 22 mass t-tests were used to test for relativity, and for my alpha value being 0.1, if it was below that, then that means that there was a significant relation between hardcore techno music or any sort of music and video game performance. And if my alpha value 0.1 was, and if my value was greater than 0.1, then that means that there was no significant relation between the two. So 14 participants completed 2 sessions, yielding the following results, and this is all the averages for the times that was overall. So as you can see, song 7, which was the silent control, had the least amount of time, that being roughly around 2 minutes and 12 seconds. And the slowest time, which was the contingent music from the game itself, Super Smash Bros. Main theme, had the longest amount of time. That means that people were least efficient in that song. You can also see that the hardcore techno songs had a varying amount of results, but it's still in between the two extrema. So here's some of the results of my t-test for my example, and as you can see, all of it is above 0.1, therefore concluding my research for this song in itself to be unsignificantly related. Additionally, this is the results of the silent control, and as you can see, against the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate's contingent theme itself, it could be a stretch to call it significantly correlated. However, it is still, the most of the results for itself is significantly uncorrelated. So what exactly does this mean? So the total amount of trials that were significantly related to each other, that being that alpha value was less than 0.05, all the trials failed this. This means that there is no relationship between hardcore techno music and the effect on video game performance, which disproves my hypothesis. All the hardcore techno trials were shown to fail this hypothesis, and both of the control trials failed to be related to video game performance in itself. This brings me to my conclusion. From my research, I have concluded that hardcore techno music does not influence players' performance in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. This brings me to my limitations. So while I only had 14 participants, which is quite a small number if I do say so myself, I was still able to significantly overcome this by doubling the amount of data points that I had by creating 2 sessions. Additionally, for the learner's bias in itself, while it still did not go away, it was substantially decreased by the 2 sessions used in itself. So while these are still limitations, they were overcame. So for future research, I would like to apply this to other sorts of music genres such as Vocaloid and other forms of electronic dance music, and other genres of video games such as RPGs and maybe simulation games. Additionally, this application can be used to competitive Super Smash Bros. Players and any real-life community tournaments. So because of this results that prove that hardcore techno music has no substantial effect on video game performance, we can affirm the tournament's uphold the tournament's decision to leave music allowed to players in these tournaments because it has no substantial effect. This brings me to my references, and I'm ready for oral defense.
All right, Jane. First question. How did your initial exploration of the scholarly conversation lead to your final research question?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Sure, and it's that first question. Yeah. How did your initial exploration of the scholarly conversation lead to your final research question?
So when I was first beginning, I was just specifically looking at Super Smash Bros. In itself, and because of that, I quickly got nowhere. It was all community studies, it was all gender studies, and of course there was a few optimization studies. There was nothing that I could really use. And because of this, I had to branch out to other forms of research of video games, such as the King of Fighters of 1999 for Fu's study in 2015, and Laura Levy's study, which was both my base research studies in 2015. Because of this, my research was significantly changed from doing more of like a survey type thing to doing an actual experimentation in itself.
Okay, how do your findings provide directions for future research in the field?
So my research shows that because hardcore techno music does not have any effect on video game performance in itself, it shows that there's not really all too much that really needs to be done unless somebody really wants to if somebody really wants to replicate my results or use them on any sort of other type of game in itself. But it just shows to other researchers that there's no substantial effect.
Last question. How did your expert advisor facilitate your deeper understanding of the research process?
Oh, right, of course. So my expert advisor, as I said earlier, was a semi-professional that actually lives within the area and goes to the local high school that I attend. He was able to help me significantly make my results more accurate and help me guided me through the process of facilitating the research in itself for Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. He helped me to both create a control setting for the research in itself, and he also helped me to code, as I said earlier. And before this, I was planning on just coding it myself, and because of the playstyle that I use, it's very heavily biased to sort of attack. Now, because of this, it would have led my results to be inconclusive, but due to the help of my expert advisor, I was able to have a deeper understanding of how the game works in itself and how to actually code these little CPUs.
Cool. All right. Thanks, Jan. Me too. That was so cool, yeah.